River Alley as a settlement starts to relate with others, and the fact that this will blur the settlement boundaries and therefore is contrary to that policy. The other things that I wanted to mention are things that are picked up in the assessment that's been done by the planning team. The first is a belief from the residents that this, from a highways perspective, still is not a safe proposal. We recognise that work has been done to make some recommendations about displays, but essentially we've got we've got 3 different access sites in a very short period. In a very short period, the traffic that will come through as a result of this development will be significant. The proposal is for 3 horses. You will have seen from your site visit that there are already 7 horses in that field. So we believe that's unsafe. The third, I think, is a consideration that if this is for approval, would something that I would ask is taken into account for the considerations. We are on the edge of a nitrate vulnerable zone, and I don't believe that the considerations for collection of manure actually take account significantly of the way in which manure is proposed to be stored. I recognise that some of that's picked up in the assessment, but would ask that actually the Environment Agency guidance is followed in full, which I don't believe the current plans propose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Mr. Bowen? Okay, thank you very much for your contribution. Can we have Mr. Cottrell, please? Welcome to committee. When you're ready, you've got 4 minutes.
Good evening, Chair. So to counter against what you've just heard there from the objector, the character of the area, those that were on the site visit will know that it's a rural area. It's surrounded by farm buildings. There is already a riding school the other side of one of the hedges. There are horses already in and around the area. I don't think that's out of character in terms of a rural area. The stable buildings are proposed as being low key. I can't see the concern in that regard. In terms of open spaces and open fields, there are obviously other open fields in and around the area, and I don't believe that an equestrian use will, for the coalition of settlements, I don't believe that that is something that would occur. So I counter that one. The concerns there that have been raised with regards to highways, obviously highways have said no objection to this access. The access is there. It had permission in 1987. There's been concerns that have been brought up by other members of public, and concerns that have been brought up with regards to a possible enforcement. Well, that was closed in 2020. There is no enforcement on this site. There is nothing in there which is confirmed in the officers' papers. The nitrate zone, in terms of the officers, they'll confirm this as well. We're not within the catchment area for the nitrate catchment zones. So that, we believe, has been addressed. And obviously the officers have taken all these things on board, and they're recommending approval for the keeping of the horses here. Just touching on there in terms of, you've just been told obviously that there are horses already in the field. Those horses are grazing. They're not being kept there. There is a difference between keeping horses in the field and grazing horses. And that's to do with, in terms of if it's grazing, it's eating the grass that's there. There is concerns that's been raised in the update paper with the welfare of those horses. There are people that look after those horses. They're in there twice a day to top up the water and make sure they're being looked after. So, but again, that's not actually a planning consideration in terms of this application that's before you. I think the other thing that I would like to kind of bring up is like I say, in terms of these visibility displays and the concerns that have been raised. The road itself, it's used regularly by the commercial yards that are also in and around those areas. So there are lots of vehicle movements that are already happening, and this is for personal use in terms of the applicant's own horses, and he lives the other side of the field. So in terms of vehicle movements and taking horses in and out of that site, it won't be happening. But highways have said there is no objection in that regard, and therefore I ask you to please approve this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Cotterill? Councillor Fulton?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, can you just clarify, you just mentioned that this is for private use, but in the application it says there's an all-weather riding school. Is that a commercial operation?
No, it's purely and simply for the applicants to be able to exercise their own horses and practice riding in and around the area. Members of the family, there are young children and things in the family, and they want to be able to ride in their own riding school. And there is one the other side of the hedge.
Councillor Rattigan?
Yeah, can I ask how many stables? I can't see this from the paperwork, and also the maximum height of the stables that are being proposed.
So in terms of the actual stable building, you'll see that on page 124, as you can see there. So the overall height of that, I can't remember exactly what I've drawn it at, but it's, go on Bethan, you're going to tell me. It's low key, Councillor Rattigan. It's 2.5 metres, around that kind of height. That's where I'd say I've drawn it at. If you can confirm, please, Bethan, that would be good.
You can ask for confirmation from officers later. Any more questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Cotterill. Do we have ward councillors wanting to speak? Welcome, Councillor Minusbound. I'm sure you're familiar with proceedings and setup.
I am. Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to this item. As we can all see from the officer's report, this application has a long history of previous application and has been refused for good reason. Those are also laid out, of course, in the report. I'm here with the support of my fellow ward councillors, the parish council and local residents to ask you to do the same to this application. You will see the reasons laid out in my submission and the submission from the previous ward councillor, Tristan Robinson. None of this has changed. Look at the objections you have in front of you from the parish council, next door neighbours to the development at Little Wyford Farm, and 18 others from residents in Deans Lane, White Hart Lane, Pamber Road and Monk Sherborne Road. Indeed, every major road in this small village, residents are of the same view. As local residents who love and know where they live, they are telling you what they know to be true, and what I'm sure you saw on your site visit. This is open and undeveloped countryside, which is at the heart of the character of Charter Alley. Indeed, this northern side of Charter Alley is without doubt the most prominent, open and impactful on the character of the village. All you can see from White Hart Lane, Deans Lane, Monk Sherborne Road is open fields, trees, hedgerows and the farmhouse, all the way to the common. This countryside and environmental objective that's already been discussed is enshrined in the Wootton St Lawrence Parish Neighbourhood Plan exactly for applications of this nature to protect that character, to protect those open views. The Development Control Committee made the right decision to reject the previous application on the grounds set out in the planning notice, and those reasons for refusal in February 2020 remain applicable today. Whilst the design and access statement submitted by the applicant mentions previous refusals, it does not address the fundamental issues. The introduction of built form to this prominent location on the edge of Charter Alley will be harmful to the character and appearance of the surrounding area. We all walk our wards. When I walk down White Hart Lane, this is the view that I have that gives me the character of the village of Charter Alley. I ask you to refuse it.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the ward councillor? Okay, I think you're getting away lightly there. Questions for officers? Councillor Mel.
Thank you, Chair. We heard reference to this becoming a brownfield site. would officers clarify if equestrian use is therefore, if it's stopped, would it still be classed as a brownfield site? It's the first I've heard of it.
So the definition of PDL would include some equestrian uses and buildings, but it wouldn't necessarily mean the whole of the land would be classed as brownfield. It would be subject to an assessment. So, but yes, equestrian sites and stable buildings would be classed as brownfield.
Thank you. I've got a supplemental, not on that topic, but on page 110 and the third paragraph down, it's being made clear that this is a private school. However, if you look at the English, the proposed development is a private equestrian use rather than commercial use, and is as such a small-scale business riding school. Now that's either a slip of the English, I know it's condition 4 that insists upon it, but reading the report first, you see that, and then we've heard two different definitions in the committee, before the committee tonight. Could you clarify it, please?
Yeah, that's a typo that wasn't picked up through the checking process. So it is private use. It will not be used commercially, and condition 4 restricts it for that. Okay.
Okay, any more questions? Councillor Faulkner?
Can you just summarise, the previous application was, in 2020, was refused. So what is it that's significant that this one is up for approval?
Just get the plan up. So here's the previous refused application. So you can see that so it's moved to the eastern part of the site. It doesn't relate to the agricultural buildings that are positioned in the top, just under the number 19 is where the development is now proposed. Also, just minding that the access that it was proposing previously, that is a single lane access on a 3-point road. So the new access is on a 2-way traffic road with adequate sight lines, whereas that is on a 1-way and was extremely tight. So there's quite some significant changes, and the level of built form significantly reduced from. So this proposal amends the proposals by reducing the amount of built form to 1 stable block, whereas that's got 2 and then another store. And provides 3 stables, a storage and a tack room, all covered within 1 building, and moves the access as well. So generally overall, there's been quite significant changes since this refusal.
Any more questions for officers? Debate? Councillor Rattigan? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it is a agricultural equestrian in the countryside, and it is an improvement on the last application. Let's just be honest. In 3 years, they have moved considerably. Why it's taken them 3 years, I don't know. But it is a private paddock for private use. We are conditioning the fact that it cannot be a business. And had we had houses here, we'd have all been up in arms, I think. But this, as Councillor Minister Bound has said, it gives the views. We're not losing a lot of the views. A lot of them will be retained. Yes, there will be a built form within the application site, but in reality, there is nothing in this on which to hang a refusal. And let's be honest, there are other buildings with, like, if you go to photograph B, which was on there earlier, I don't know if you can do that. Yeah, you can see the built form, so that is really close to this application site. And I think on that basis, that is agricultural, this is equestrian, I think it is a supportable application in its current form, and therefore I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation as it stands.
Thank you. We have a move. Do we have a seconder? Was that Councillor Bound? Did you wish to second? Councillor House-Sorrell, did you want to add anything? No. Okay, so we have moved and seconded. Motion in favour of the recommendation. Move to vote. Those in favour, please show. 6, 7. Yeah, okay. That's carried. If we could have the decision recorded, please.
Thank you. So that application is approved as per the agenda and the conditions listed at the end of the report. Thank you.
So, yeah, no votes recorded again. Okay, so the next item, number 3, land at Galley Lane, Headley. If we could have the introduction, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for permission in principle for residential development of a minimum of 1 dwelling and a maximum of 4 dwellings at Galley Lane, Headley. There is no update for this item, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, and we don't appear to have any speakers on this one, so do we have any questions for officers? I guess we don't. Debate? We have Councillor Housewell.
Yeah, just the fact that it's a PIP and the entire package of information that's been put together for us seems to indicate that it is in principle somewhere that could be developed. So I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Okay, we've got a mover. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Faulkner. So it's been moved and seconded. Those in favour, please show. Yep, that looks like it. No against, no abstentions. We can have the decision.
Thank you, Chairman. To confirm, that item is approved as per the agenda paper. Thank you.
Okay, item number 4, land adjacent to Orchard House, Ball Hill. If we could have the introduction, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for permission in principle for 4 dwellings. Originally it was submitted for 5, but it's now been reduced. So it's a minimum of 4, maximum of 4. The application is just to consider land use location development, as similar with the previous one. An indicative layout has been submitted which shows how 4 dwellings could be positioned, with 2 at the front of the site and 2 near the back. In terms of an update, a further letter of objection has been received raising concerns that have already been addressed within the officer's report. 10 letters of support have also been received, which those highlighting points which are in the update paper. The application is recommended for approval, and a list of the documents and details of the TDC application are listed within the agenda paper. Thank you.
Thank you. So we don't have any speakers registered for this item. So, councillors, do you have any questions for officers? Councillor Faulkner.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the reasons for approval, number 1 on page 145, references the 5-year land supply issue. In previous applications, we've established that in the AONB, unless there are exceptional circumstances, we shouldn't have development. And this isn't in the neighbourhood plan either, so.
Thank you, Chairman. If I could just pick that up. The reference to development not being appropriate in AONBs is in respect of whether it's major, whether the local planning authority consider it to be major development, and obviously given the scale of the scheme here for up to 4 dwellings, it's not considered to be major development in the context of the AONB.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. Page 153, previous planning history. Can you confirm it was this site that was withdrawn on 7th of October 21? And it was precisely this site?
Yes, it was, but it was for larger and included part of the paddock, if we get that. Yeah, so it included land to the east as well. So it's not just, so this slither of strip is the bit that's got buildings on. The area included an extra bit of land with the paddock, which had no buildings on. So it's just confined the site to where existing built form lies.
Thank you.
Councillor Rattigan.
Can you just confirm it isn't previously developed land is not a brownfield site? Because frankly, there are confusions within the papers.
They've tried to evidence through this application that it is previously developed land. However, the evidence that we've got is not sufficiently precise and ambiguous as we would look at and determine under a lawful development certificate, but you can do that under this process. Basically, there are agricultural buildings there that we consider at the moment, with the evidence that we've got, there's not enough to say that these are commercial buildings. They're agricultural buildings, which then would not be previously developed land. But there are buildings there. So in the context of the character of the area, the location of the development, and with the short lack of housing, 5-year housing land supply, we consider this site suitable in our current sort of policy context. Thank you.
Therefore, you're saying in character terms, there's no change with having development or buildings on the site as it is now and would be in the future. Is that what you're concurring?
Yes, so in terms of landscape impact, compared to the previous application, we're saying no, because it's where existing built form exists, which is lawful. The buildings there are there, but just the land use is questioned. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? No. Debates? Councillor Rattigan.
I'll be happy to move the recommendation as outlined by officers.
Councillor Millers. No. Thank you. Okay, it's being moved and seconded. Those in favour of the recommendation, please show. Nine. Those against? Councillor Faulkner. Any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. If we could have the decision, please.
Thank you, Chair. So that application is approved as per the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, so the next item up is land at Bramdown Farm, South Lichfield. If we could have the introduction, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the erection of a farm workers dwelling, together with a detached garage and parking area at Bramdown Farm, Overton Way, South Lichfield. There is no update paper, no update on the update paper for this one, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We don't appear to have any objectors down to speak, but we have Mr. Jarman in support, if you'd like to approach. Welcome to Development Control Committee. When you're ready, you press the button on your right, you'll have 4 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As you have already heard, the application is recommended for approval by officers, and on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Small, I'd also like to endorse this recommendation. The reasons for this are clear, but I will begin by saying that Mr. and Mrs. Small are well known in the local community, and their family have been farming the land in the local area for over 100 years. Despite many challenges that face the farming industry, they have been able to sustain a successful business. Bramdown Farm, which they took full ownership of 4 or 5 years ago, is now at the centre of their arable operations, which they've already invested significant finances into, including the construction of new agricultural buildings that join the application site. These, which are being used as grain stores and for keeping of high-value farm equipment, of course need to be monitored as well as being protected from rural crime. The diversification of the equestrian related operations at the applicant's traditional centre of operations at Park Farm, which itself is a success story, has resulted in Mr. and Mrs. Small now managing the operation at Bramdown Farm, whilst their sons have taken on the management of the operations at Park Farm and are taking on the family home there. The proposed agricultural dwelling is to be occupied by Mr. and Mrs. Small, the provision of which is catered for in the council's local plan. This correctly recognises that there will be instances where it is necessary for a new dwelling to be built in the countryside to meet the need for a worker to be accommodated on site, for example, as in this case, for agriculture. Understandably, the policy requires there to be a need, and along with an agricultural appraisal provided for my client by Simmons and Sons, the council also appointed an agricultural consultant to assess this aspect of the proposal. All parties agree that there is an essential need for the dwelling for reasons related to crime prevention, to general management and maintenance of crops, and this has been confirmed in the committee report. Notwithstanding the above, care has been taken to ensure that the proposal delivers a sustainable form of development. In this case, the proposal will achieve 15% biodiversity net gain against a policy that requires 10% gain and only on larger sites. The proposal goes above and beyond this requirement. The proposal will also achieve nutrient neutrality, noting that the government are now themselves advising that this requirement should not apply to new housing. The fact that the proposal will achieve neutrality, again, is a positive in this context. Also, just to correct an error in the committee report, no hedges are to be removed to facilitate the access. The location and design of the dwelling has also been carefully considered, and to that end, the landscape officer has acknowledged that the use of local materials and a clearly defined curtilage help to make the proposal acceptable in the wider landscape character. We would add to this that the dwelling and soft landscape around it will also soften the impact of the adjacent agricultural buildings, again a positive part of the proposal. It should also be noted that there's been letters of support, including from the National Farmers Union, which provides high praise to the proposal and need, which is also a testament to the application. In short, the proposal complies with the Council's development plan policies as confirmed by the Council's own planning officer. Their recommendation to approve the application should therefore be upheld. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Do we have any questions for Mr. Jarman? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Jarman. Questions for officers? Don't appear to be any questions for officers. Debates? Councillor Miller, followed by Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Chairman. I, like several other members on this committee, have been around on this development control for some years, and we've had several agricultural buildings submitted during that time. I would just like to make the comment right now that this is probably one of the better submissions. It ticks all the boxes as far as I'm concerned. Especially when we go through the agricultural reviews, and they're submitted as well to reinforce the issue. The rural economy is quite important, and anything we can do as a council to support the rural economy, in this case maintaining an ongoing business, deserves our full support, and I would move the officer's recommendation for this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Chair. I have no hesitation in following what Councillor Miller says and seconding it. It does, the officer report justifies, as far as I'm concerned, the need for this particular development.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We'll move to vote. Those in favour, please show. That appears unanimous. Those against? No against or abstentions? Okay, that's unanimous. Can we have the decision, please?
Thank you, Chairman. To confirm that application is approved in accordance with the main agenda.
Okay, next item, land to the southeast of Little Knoll Hill in Kingsclear, If we could have the offer to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is another permission in principle for a minimum of 1 dwelling and a maximum of 2 dwellings to consider land use, location and amount. An indicative layout has been provided which shows how 2 dwellings could be positioned within the site. In terms of an update, page 211 refers to the proposal being 1 dwelling, but it is a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 2. The application is recommended for approval subject to the list of documents and details for the TDC application at the end of the agenda paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appear to have no speakers listed. So, councillors, do you have any questions for the officers? Councillor Rattigan.
On the reasons for approval, have we now added in that as the council cannot currently demonstrate 5-year housing land supply? I thought on PIPs it only needed to be location, land use and the quantum of development. So why have we added in that further line?
I think it's just adding that is the reason why that is because we can't have a 5-year, that we don't have a 5-year housing land supply in place, that it doesn't that our policies are out of date, and that we're just saying that that's why if our policies are in date we may take a different stance on that.
Can I ask if you've changed that? Because in previous committee meetings we've only had location, land use and the quantum of development as the reasons. I mean, I'm quite content that we leave it at the 3, but the addition of that 5-year housing land supply issue almost gives green lights everybody who watches us. They're saying, oh look, they're highlighting it themselves, let's stick in an application because they haven't got the 5-year housing land supply. I wonder if it is necessary when we've got a PIP in front of us.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, the application itself is an application for permission in principle, so you're considering the principle of development, and as you've got set out in the agenda paper, our housing land supply position is relevant to the consideration of the principle of development, and therefore, given that it is what provides us with a tilted balance for any consideration, and that tilted balance in itself means that development that might not otherwise be acceptable on greenfield sites is acceptable, then that is a key reason for us recommending approval in this instance, and that's why it is now included within your reasons for approval in your agenda paper.
Thank you, Greg, for the clarification.
Any other questions for officers? Okay, we'll move on to debate. Councillor Howard-Sorrell.
Happy to move the recommendation.
Okay, we have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Okay, Councillor Faulkner, well done. Recommendation moved and seconded. Those in favour, please show. Yeah, that appears unanimous. Then nobody against. For abstentions. Okay, good. We'll have the decision, please.
Thank you, and that application is approved as per the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, item 7. Yes, Councillor Bound will leave us now. Okay, item number 7. Don't know how that's pronounced actually. Is it Papine? Papine, Borkhurst Road, Borkhurst. If we could have the introduction, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The application is the application for erection of a 3-bedroom dwelling within part of the garden of the existing property, Papine, and creation of a new vehicular access. There is an update paper. Within the update paper, it provides some details of the drainage proposal, confirming that the site isn't within an area of increased risk of flooding, but that the proposal is to secure the surface water drainage scheme that has been submitted by way of condition, with a subsequent informative note and then with some minor changes to other conditions already within your agenda paper for the reasons set out therein. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We don't appear to have any speakers recorded. So, councillors, do you have any questions for officers? Okay, no questions for officers, and we'll move to debate. Do we have a mover or seconder? Councillor Rattigan?
Yeah, I'm happy to move the recommendation as laid out by officers.
Okay, anyone want a second? Councillor Goddison? Okay, it's been moved and seconded in favour of the recommendation. All those in favour, please show. I think that's unanimous. None against? Any against? Councillor Rattigan will like to lower his hand. None against and no abstentions? Okay, I think that's it. We'll have the decision, please.
Thank you, Chairman. To confirm that application is approved in accordance with the agenda paper and the update paper. Thank you.
Okay, so last item tonight is the quarterly planning appeals report.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just to draw your attention to one error on the final page of the report, so apologies, page 289. The application there listed as land to the north of west of Junipers was an allowed appeal, not dismissed, so apologies just to correct that. The only particular application draw members' attention to in Appendix A was a major appeal decision which was allowed. That was an application members may recall at the Central 37 site, Kingsclear Road. In very summary terms, the inspector found that there would not be any harms to heritage assets, designated or undesignated, or to the in relation to noise and disturbance related to the next door public house. The benefits of the scheme were considered to be housing, affordable housing, reuse of a brownfield land in a sustainable location, acceptable level of multifunctional green space, and therefore the decision was allowed. It's a reminder to members in terms of particularly around major decisions, the appeal performance, which is obviously critical in relation to meeting government's performance requirements. The remainder of the report sets out in Appendix B all other, or summarises all other appeals received in that quarter. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so I believe this item is for noting. Let's see if anyone's got any additional questions. Councillor Rattigan?
I don't know if the officers have seen the report in the Basingstoke Gazette, which highlighted the number of overturns by us as a committee. Would you like to make any comment on our placing on that list?
Thank you, Councillor Rattigan. I think the only point to draw members' attention to as far as this report is the risk management part on page 281, which effectively sets out the circumstances whereby designation could be an issue if performance criteria isn't met. So that's the purpose of bringing this report to members, is so that you have an idea of how many appeals are being won or lost and what the potential implications of those are.
Councillor Howard-Sorrell?
Thank you, Chair. I'm curious how many objections are received in the cases that get overturned. Because we had objections tonight of 5 or 6, which is just over the limit. You need, I think it's 5 in order to come to committee. If that limit were increased and we, by extension, increased the delegated powers of officers to make decisions, would that help divert some of these that are getting overturned? Because we might have things come to committee, have an impassioned speech from a resident or whatever it might be, we're making a poor decision. So if we could get some numbers in relation to each of the ones that were dismissed and allowed, showing how many objections, and if the number of objections increase might have prevented them coming to committee, that might be useful and interesting to me at least.
Thank you, Councillor Howard-Sorrell. Ultimately, that would be a matter for Council, because it would be a change to the Constitution. I think in terms of the different as it works at the moment, the different triggers, if you like, in terms of number of objectors is different across the size of application. So you're right, for minor applications, in most instances in assessment policy boundaries, it's over 5 objections. Outside, it's 4 objections, and for major applications where there's this particular focus in terms of performance criteria, it's above 10 objections. So it would be a matter for council ultimately to decide where that delegation and authority applies.
Okay, there being any other questions, I guess we'll note that report then. And there being no further business items, I'll declare this meeting closed, time 10 to 8. Thank you very much for your attendance.